Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Leaders of Inclusive Childcare podcast series brought to you by Can Assist at the University of Victoria and the Ministry of Education and Childcare of British Columbia. My name is Alicia Garcia, and I will be your host for this series. I would like to take a moment just to acknowledge that I am recording today's podcast on Lekwungen territory. I live, work, and play on this land that has been cherished and nurtured by the Lekwungen and Onisanic peoples since time immemorial. I am an uninvited settler here, and I remain committed to learning and unlearning to create a world where everyone feels like they belong. And I really invite our listeners to take time today to think about what truth and reconciliation means to them and really just spend time on the land to connect yourself and ground yourself. Today's topic is leadership through a Métis lens, and our special guest is Kari-Anne Barr. Kari-Anne, thank you so much for being here today. I am so excited to talk to you. Before we get into our topic, would you mind just sharing a bit about yourself and your work?
Absolutely. Tanshe Kioel, Kari-Anne Dishnakashin, La Rivière Rouge, Michifnia, Mi Famille, Berthelette et Caron. Hello, everyone. My name is Kari-Anne Barr. I am a Red River Métis, and my family names are Berthelette and Caron. I have been an early childhood educator for over 25 years, and I am a pedagogist with the Métis Nation of British Columbia's Ministry of Education. I would also like to respectfully acknowledge that I live, work on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. I hold deep gratitude for the caretakers of this land, waters, and sky for their enduring presence, teachings, and stewardship. These lands are also the chosen home of the Métis Nation of Greater Victoria. As I speak today, I do so with humility, relational accountability, acknowledging the responsibilities that come from living and working on these lands.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here today, Kari-Anne. Getting right into it, what does it mean to you to lead through a Métis lens?
For me, this means leading with love and doing the hard work, being accountable, having cultural integrity, sharing the power, and braiding leadership through relationship, land, story, and reciprocity. I am guided by our community and our Métis values, the teaching of our elders and knowledge carriers, and the land itself. It's about being authentic. It's how we show up with curiosity and how we engage with being responsive to our communities and our community needs. So I invite others to share their knowledge bundles, their stories, and the tools that they carry. I also reflect on how we can lift each other up and help folks share their own gifts and find their voices. When we lead with our Métis core values, we are honoring the whole child, their spirit, their culture, their voice, their families, and we truly believe that every child is a gift and that they are knowledge carriers themselves. So our leadership needs to reflect that. And as a pedagogist, I help to make children's learning visible. So we are supporting the work that we do from being directing to relating. It's about that noticing and responding and reflecting, holding space for learning to emerge through our stories and movements, the land, and our relationships. So Métis pedagogist really reminds us to lead with humility and care and weave inclusion into every moment. Something that guides me in my leadership work is the BC Early Learning Framework, the Métis Learning Framework, our 12 Métis core values, the United Nations Declaration for the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and our Kwichitoyak, which is a Michif word that means we take care of each other.
That's beautiful. I really like this idea of heart work. Can you speak a bit more about what that means?
Absolutely. So the heart work really is around taking care of each other, right? We're taking a look at the work that we do and really spending that deep time in reflection. So we are inviting our children in, our families in, our educators in, our communities in. And that means we really have to think with our hearts before we react to a situation.
I like how you mentioned that involves families and staff as well and community members. It's when you're a leader, you're not just doing that heart work with the children. You're doing it with everyone in the program and the community. So it's just incredibly important. And I also love how you said that part of this Métis leadership is you learn from children too. They are knowledge holders as well. So, can you speak a bit more about that and just some things that we actually do learn from children on a daily basis?
With children, we're really thinking about who they are deeply and in relationship to the environment around them. And we have to take a look at children as having knowledge bundles. And what do they carry in their bundles? Children have stories of the land, they have stories of their families, they share their stories of courageous love and tolerance and sharing and kindness. So to me, it really makes sense to listen to the children and hold them up as they're educating me. I've learned more from children than I've ever learned from a book.
That is absolutely true. I would agree. And I think they love sharing their stories just as much as we love hearing them. So I think giving them that opportunity is just so important. All right. So shifting gears here, I would like to talk a bit about cultural responsiveness and cultural humility. What does that look like in a childcare setting, specifically as a leader?
Yeah, so cultural responsiveness to me is the daily act of love. So it lives in the materials that we offer, the stories we share, the relationships that we nurture. It looks like knowledge bundles filled with Métis items, seasonal provocations that connect us to the land, the language practices that honor Michif and other Métis languages. It also creates spaces where children with diverse needs feel seen and supported and celebrated. As leaders, we model cultural integrity and inclusive care in ways that feel authentic. We mentor educators to embed culture in their everyday routines, not just special events. We ask reflective questions. Are our values of kindness, sharing, balance, are they alive in these spaces? We want to stay curious about that child's identity, and we respond to adapting our environment and our practices to honor who they are. Cultural responsiveness, it's not just a checklist. It's a way of being. It's Kawich which take care of each other. And, learning and leading with love through a Métis lens is going to help us to do that.
And I'm wondering too about more specific ways that you can show this cultural responsiveness in programs as a leader. So you were talking about incorporating Michif and other Métis languages in your program. So what could that possibly look like for leaders?
So for us, it's really about making connections to our language knowledge carriers and taking that unhurried time, so we call it Kyotoan, right, is sitting without an agenda and really making those solid relationships because there's so many words in Michif language that do not have an English equivalent. So we want to take that time, invite our elders in that do speak Michif, our language holders, having the words embedded in all of our curriculum throughout the day. So when you go into a center, you're saying Tashikia. And when you leave, you're saying Kuapamitin. And you're making it a normalcy rather than sitting down and we're doing Michif or speaking our languages. We want to really lift the children up with excitement and that knowledge. If we're having lunchtime, we want to make sure that we're Merci d'étonnant pour Oma la magie. Thank you so much for the food, right? And giving that thanks through our Michif language.
So incorporating it in times where the children will actually know when to use it and when it's a good time to use it in their lives outside the program, even.
Absolutely. So for many of our early years learning programs, it's really about connection. And so we want to ensure that, every part of our program has culture and language integrated into it.
Do you find too that when culture is woven through program, your staff really benefit from that?
Absolutely. Even for early years programs, we're so lucky to be able to have language speakers that do workshops And so anybody that's wanting to learn to speak Michif at our centers, there are workshops available for them to take language learning lessons. And also to just inviting educators to talk to each other and being able to support that language. It's starting within our early years and it's going out to the families. So our children are really holding that knowledge in their bundles and sharing that part of their bundle with their families. And then they're learning Michif and they're getting excited about learning languages.
And it's just something so nourishing that I think can really fill people's souls and spirit. So that's incredible. Now, for people who lead programs who are of a variety of cultures, how can people address their fear of doing something wrong? Because we've heard in community that there are people that really want to incorporate so many varieties of cultures in their programs that the children can relate to in their programs, but they are scared that they're going to say or do something wrong or offend somebody. So, what can we say to those people that have that hesitancy?
Yeah, I mean, the fear is real. It often comes from a place of deeply caring. So I've seen educators hesitate because they're worried that they'll misstep. But if we take a look at Métis pedagogy, it reminds us that perfection isn't the goal, the relationship is the goal. And, it really is about creating those safe, brave spaces for dialogue. And when we do that, the fear begins to soften and we learn and lean into our humility and courage and patience and knowing that mistakes are going to be part of that learning and that I share my own learning journey openly and honestly. I offer responsive support and reassurance. I stay curious about what's underneath the fear. I use reflective practices that help to ease that discomfort and help create that connection. When culture and inclusion are approached with kindness and trust, the relationships deepen. So that's where the real growth begins. And you only know what you know when you know it. And that's where, we can be curious and hold space for the unknown. And learning to sit with the discomfort of not knowing, I think, is a huge skill for educators. And it helps to forge a pathway forward with humility and education and inclusion. We're all learning together.
It's very, very true. I think making mistakes is human, and we just kind of have to approach that with humility and grace and just know that that is going to happen. That's part of the work. Now, if there is a leader out there who is Métis and maybe they work with people who they are not Métis, how would you recommend that they begin their journey of weaving their culture into the program?
So what I would do is I would take a look around at the people that you have connected to your program. Are there families that might be willing to come in and share? Are there elders that are willing to share? Reach out to the Métis nation that's around you. There are chartered communities here in Victoria reaching out to the Métis nation of Greater Victoria, reaching out to Métis Nation of British Columbia. There are a lot of resources that are out there. We have our recruitment and retention that helps to support Métis specific early childhood educators. But there's many ways you can think about inclusion through story, through art and really taking a look at the gifts that the educators already carry in their bundles. When we're taking a look at Métis core values, we're talking about kindness, tolerance, respect, Mother Nature, getting out on the land, and really connecting the kids to the land. So there's many different ways of being able to bring that culture and language in and asking, right? Having that humility enough to ask and to go, you know what, I don't know about this, and I'm eager to find out more.
Yes, that's amazing. And I think that's actually a good segue into the next question I have because we talk a lot about how important it is to build community when you are a leader and how to foster connections with people, not just the children, but with staff and with families. And how do you build that connection, especially if you're doing it kind of from just the start?
So I've had lots of experience in my 25 years of looking at ways of building connection. So culture, I would say, is invited through relationship. It's not something that we just add in, it's something that we live. So we build connections with elders and families and the land. We embed culture into the materials, the languages, the routines, and everyday interactions when you're just walking through the door and you're invited into play. So, not just during the holidays or events, but sharing gratitude and respect that guide us in this work. So, listening deeply for what's missing. We respond by adapting to our environments and our practices, reflecting on our own culture, and it lives in the everyday. We honor ways that Métis know and their ways of being through their storytelling, through land learning, through seasonal teachings. It's doing like seasonal calendar instead of the traditional calendar, getting to know elders, leading with love. And it means that every child's reflected and respected in your program. It really lifts us up and sees each other as a gift and creates a space for knowledge in our learning environment. So, acknowledging that parents are their child's first teachers, inviting the families in to share their gifts. And inclusion of culture really means that we are all in the circle together.
I love that. So it's just like a big family almost in the program.
That connection, I think, when people are really worried about how to start this big work, right? The connection is the correction. And so we really want to be thinking deeply with those around us. And when we don't know, we ask. We can ask our families, how do we want to bring culture into our program? And, they have connections as well. And they have some amazing ideas of how we can gather together and make our circle bigger.
Do you have any advice for program leaders who maybe have been trying to reach out to family or a specific parent and they just really can't get them involved? What would you say to the leaders who are trying so hard?
Well, I think it is really about that connection, right? And it may be each parent one by one, right? Because we know we put the big invites out for things, but it may be just getting really to know those parents. Do you spend a little bit of time with them throughout the month? Are we inviting them to stay a little bit longer? Are we setting the expectation for when parents come in about gathering together? It's really about the spirit of what's happening in your center. The more we know, the more we know,
Mhm.
and really taking those opportunities, putting them into your program handbooks, putting them into the early years programs as an expectation that we gather together at the beginning and we gather together at the end. So, what opportunities can we create for those one on ones? Getting to know the parents' names. That's huge, right? Calling them by their name. We know it gets so busy within centers and at early years programs, drop-in programs. It is up to all of us in the community to make sure that we are making those strong connections because we're all there for the children and we want the best that we can be within our programs and with our engagement with families.
And in the last episode that we recorded of this podcast, we were actually talking about those more informal gatherings with families, kind of allow for them to feel a bit more comfortable to come. So I'm wondering if you have any events or program opportunities for parents to come and families to come that are just less informal and just more about that connection.
Many of our programs have elders that are in our programs. And one of the things that we did is we always invited families to come and have tea or aunties and uncles. We invited extended family in. So maybe a parent is not able to come, but maybe grandma or grandpa, Mushum and Kukum, or an auntie and uncle can come. Maybe it's a really closely connected neighbor that can come and share and spend some time. Muffin in the mornings at drop off or cultural teaching. So workshops on moccasin beading or beaded flowers or just different information that can be just for the parents as well. What are we bringing to our programs to help with leadership skills for parents?
I think it's so important too because a lot of people that we've heard in community, they've said, we don't know when to do these things. The families are working or they're just really busy. And so I like how you're mentioning that even just having a muffin in the morning for when they're dropping off the child, anyways, could be just a great way to connect, even if it's for a few minutes, because we are busy. But I do think it is worth putting in that extra effort just to make that connection with families.
Yeah, and we know for many of our families that connect through our early learning spaces that they stay connected to community. So it's a beginning step for them in their learning journey, as we have many that are coming back to culture and coming back to being in relationship with their Métis nations. It's vitally important that we keep our circle going with no beginning and no end. It's just learning in relationship to each other and finding many different ways of being together.
I'm wondering too how that transfers with staff and, ECEs, ECEAs, and the people that work in the program, because we know that burnout and turnover are pretty prevalent right now in the field. And so I'm just wondering, when you lead with this heart work, how do you approach staff in that way as well?
We want to be inclusive, so it's not just about having a parent night. It's about having a gathering. And
Mhm.
so that gathering needs to include educators, it needs to include our elders, our families, our extended families, and really make sure that when the invitations are going out, that you're lifting the educators up and you're seeing them as leaders as well. Because the work that they do all day long throughout the year, our families really, really deeply appreciate the work that they do and the care and the love that they put into caring for our children and raising our nations in support of culture and language. And it's a ask that we ask out of reciprocity. And we need to show that reciprocity in everything that we're doing. And we need our educators and families to get to know each other. We have your precious gift with us all day long, right? And we want to make sure that we're doing things in a good way and that we have that open communication.
Yeah, that framing is so important, where instead of calling it family night or parent night, it's not just about, the child and their family, but also the staff and everyone in that program's family. I like that idea of bringing extended family members if there's certain members that can't make it. Like, I think that's so important to just build that community and connection. And I think it helps staff also feel supported and appreciated. So I think that's incredible too. And then moving on to my last question here, what are some barriers to Métis ways of leading for leaders and staff?
So when we're looking at barriers, what we're really thinking about is connection, right? And so some of the challenges that remain in early learning spaces include the limited capacity, lack of multicultural understanding, and structures that don't always reflect our Métis perspective. So Métis leadership is sometimes overlooked or not fully recognized. And we really want to begin looking at the staff and helping staff to feel comfortable, support them, and help them with things that they feel uncertain about. They may have lack of opportunities to connect with Métis culturally grounded mentorship. So we begin by naming those barriers honestly, and we stay curious about the roots and the impacts that they have. We respond by advocating for cultural safety, funding, recognition of pedagogical leadership that reflects Métis values. We reflect on how systems can shift to honor our Métis ways of knowing and being. Métis ways of leading with love call us to be really courageous, wise, to build strong environments where Métis leadership is visible, valued, and sustained, and where every child is uplifted as a gift and a knowledge carrier.
That's beautiful. And I appreciate how you said that naming that barrier is the first step. We have to make sure that we're naming it and then finding solutions and ways to advocate for ourselves and for our communities. So that's super important. Do you have anything to add?
One of the things that I was really thinking about with some of the questions is when we recognize that every child, educator, and family when we recognize them as knowledge carriers, the leadership really shifts from directing what to do to relating to what we can do. It becomes an act of noticing and responding and reflecting, holding space for the learning to emerge through story and movement and land. And the relationships Métis pedagogy invites us to lead with is humility and care. So much like our Métis sash, we're weaving inclusion into every moment and every connection through curiosity, responsiveness, and reflection. And this is what it means to lead with inclusion.
And I think a question I have for you then too is what does inclusion mean to you?
So inclusion to me means that everybody in the circle is equal and that we're always in the circle thinking deeply about our relationships to each other, honoring each other as a gift, and building our knowledge bundles together. It means being curious, it means being kind, it means tolerance, humility, love, and it really means being okay with sitting with the unknown, but curious enough to find out what you don't know.
Especially for leaders. We've been talking about this with community, saying that a lot of times leaders feel like they need to have all the answers and they need to know everything so that they can support the people in their programs. But I think part of being a leader is being able to admit when you don't know, and that's okay. And, when you have that support system around you, they will understand and you can work as a team together to figure out a solution. And so I think just the way that you are talking about this approach to leadership, it just seems so much grounded in love and grounded in understanding and humility and tolerance for people. And I think that's incredible and exactly what we need. Not even in childcare, just across everywhere. We need that more and more. So yeah, Kari-Anne, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to have this moment of reflection and really help to support lifting educators up and our community. And I'm so thankful for this time to really deeply think about inclusion. Inclusion to me, even on a personal level, with having my own children that have inclusion needs and having educators that have inclusion needs. I think we're at a really wonderful space and time to be brave and courageous and be okay with being authentically who we are. And just remember to lift each other up. So, merci and kuapa mitten.
Thank you, everyone, for joining today's discussion. Next week's topic is incorporating culture as a leader with special guest Anna Delgado. Look for that on Wednesday. And until then, thank you for your support and take care.